and welcome to India Global. I'm Gargi Rawat. This is the show that takes you through all the big international events of the week. We also take an in-depth look at what these developments mean for India. Let's take a look at some of the big stories we're tracking today. President Joe Biden escalates the trade war with China, orders a ban on US tech investments in China in three key areas of chips, supercomputer and some AI systems. Biden writes to the Congressman declaring a national emergency to deal with the threat from China. What does this mean for India? India Region Congressman Khanna leading a bipartisan group of US lawmakers to attend Independence Day celebrations. He speaks to NDTV, says it's a deeply personal trip. His grandfather was a freedom fighter. India issues advisory for its citizens in Niger, asks them to leave the country, suggests deferring non-essential travel as the situation remains volatile. A West African grouping, ECOWAS, has agreed to deploy standby force, says all options are open. The Pakistan Parliament is dissolved and the process for a caretaker government begins. So Pak polls will take place only after November. This after Imran Khan has been barred from politics for 5 years. The number of people killed in the Hawaiian wildfires has risen to 55, while hundreds more are said to be missing in the island of Maui. Joe Biden issues a major disaster declaration, releases funds for recovery. In a move seen as a big escalation of US's trade war with the Red Dragon, President Joe Biden has banned key high-tech investments in China. This includes the sectors like semiconductors, microelectronics and artificial intelligence, crucial for India's economic cooperation with the US. Now, Biden said in a letter to Congress he was declaring a national emergency to deal with the threat of advancement by countries like China in sensitive technologies and products critical to the military intelligence, surveillance or cyber-enabled capabilities. The order is set to be implemented in next year following multiple rounds of public commentary. So what does this development now mean for India? India is on the doorstep of making high-tech chips, and we aim to establish 20 semiconductor design manufacturing units in the next 6 years. This comes amid our expansive tech partnership with the United States, which was advanced during the Prime Minister's recent trip to the US, where Micron announced its plans to build a new assembly and test facility in Gujarat. So what does this really mean for India? We're now joined by Shimona Mohan, Research Assistant, Center for Security, Strategy and Technology, ORF. Thank you so much, Shimona, for joining us. And first and foremost, explain the US's reasoning, why the president, has declared this emergency order, and what are the fears? If you could explain that to our viewers.
Sure. Absolutely, Gargi. So this order comes after a lot of deliberation on the US side over the past couple of years, in the midst of what is being called decoupling from China. And this is technical in the sense that the US now realizes that technology is one of the forefronts of security, which is why it is now taking steps to ensure that critical technologies like quantum information systems, like semiconductors, which are basically the building blocks of modern day technology, as well as artificial intelligence, which is something that will have repercussions beyond and across sectors, are being restricted in terms of Chinese investment, as well as other skill development related initiatives within China.
That's right. And basically, the US didn't want any of their investments helping advance Chinese technologies, especially when it came to issues like defense.
Absolutely. So quantum information, for example, is something that's used to hack and end up advancing a lot of cybersecurity capabilities of the countries that have it. So having quantum information technologies on your side will be like having a super nitro boost in terms of your defense capabilities. And that is something that the US does not want to trade with or share information about with China, so that China cannot evolve its own quantum information technology super system around this. Similarly, for semiconductors, they are the building blocks of modern day technology, and the executive order refers to a massive supply chain implications that result out of China being the current hegemon in terms of semiconductor distribution. And of course, artificial intelligence, as we know, in terms of investments in Chinese AI systems, both China and US are investing massively in lethal autonomous weapon systems, in other dual use AI technologies. And both of these will have massive repercussions, not only for defense systems, but also for public information systems, which can then be dually applied in defense purposes.
All right, and so Shimona, with for several years now, we've seen that for US funds, for US investors and venture capitalists, Chinese tech industry was very attractive. But now clearly this is going to come to a screeching halt, and herein lies the advantage for India.
Absolutely. So India has also really upped its game when it comes to these new and emerging information technologies and other technologies. So India signed off on a 6,000 crore national mission on quantum technology and applications, the NMQTA, earlier this year. And it absolutely refers to the development of homegrown quantum computers as one of its major objectives. Similarly, for Semicon, we have an India Semicon mission, which has been going for a couple of years, and there's massive investments and massive developments around this within the country itself, which can obviously be augmented by US support. And for artificial intelligence as well, globally, India is on the top of the skill penetration ladder when it comes to an AI-ready market, and has a valuation of about $6.4 billion, which is only set to increase with new and emerging developments like generative AI. So this is something that will see a lot more interest from US now that China is out of the picture in terms of investment markets.
Now, China has, of course, responded to this. The embassy in Washington responded, and they've called this move blatant economic coercion as well as technological bullying. That's an interesting, term to use, but technological bullying is what they've called it. Do you expect in the days to come there will be, a bigger response from the Chinese side, and and what could that be?
So historically, whenever even India has had some of these economic standoffs with China, this has been a standard response. If you remember back in 2020, after the Galwan clash, when we had banned a number of Chinese applications like TikTok, etc., and there had been a number of other economic sanctions, the Chinese response was very similar. Now the Chinese China has an advantage on its end, which is that its market share value cannot be ignored. It is something that the US has to really take into advantage with in terms of India. So when it comes to China, their production capabilities, their skill development, their institutional support of these particular programs is very, very strong. So in fact, the year after we banned all those apps and we had an economic standoff with China in the aftermath of the Galwan clash, our trade with China actually went back to pre-pandemic levels, which means that the decoupling strategy that India tried to follow at that point didn't actually work out. So the idea now is to make sure that the same thing that the US is doing in terms of its economic standoff and in terms of limiting technological supply to China doesn't end up in the same way. And I think India can really come into the picture and help prevent that from happening.
Right. And, we're hoping that this will help India, and the US will, deepen the partnership, especially on the technology front with India. But you spoke about, our trade with China earlier. At this point, how dependent are we, or how much do we, need Chinese technology, or what is the relationship currently?
Absolutely. I think at this point, China and US are still our biggest trade partners. We still get a lot of our technological supply through imports. A lot of our semiconductor imports, for example, cater to the need of the Indian market as well. So at this point, even though we have a higher government appetite for developing these technologies in-house, and there is a ton of investment that's coming through from not only the government, but also external partners, for example, Foxconn, which has been very interested in pushing forward for the Indian semicon revolution as well. there is still a lot to be done. There are still a lot of institutional support mechanisms that we can implement within the country. And there are still a lot of international partners that we should look towards to make this entire in-house Make in India project a little bit bigger and a little bit better.
All right. We're also now joined by Professor Harsh V. Pande, Vice President, Studies and Foreign Policy at Observer Research Foundation. Thank you so much for joining us. We were speaking to Shimona about the U.S. President's latest move and where he's limiting, investment in China, and especially when it comes to technology. So what is your view of this, and how helpful will this now be for India? What does this now mean for India?
Well, I think it's a long-term, if you look at it from a long-term perspective, this is a long-term, almost a struggle between two leading powers in the international system. And I think Americans are making it fairly evident that they do not see technology as an area where they trust China, and therefore they are creating all kinds of barriers, in fact. And what is interesting, in fact, as part of this conversation, that what Biden administration has done and the reaction it has generated in the body politic of the US is that even more stricter restrictions are being demanded by both the Democrats and the Republicans. So I think if you are sitting here in India, you can look at this as almost a structural contest between two powers, and perhaps a space opening up for a country like India that can make some moves here and take some advantage out of and create some opportunities for itself as the two big technology players in the market or in the international system evolve and create a different partnership for themselves.
Right. And just briefly, Professor Pande, do you see, China coming out with a reaction to this? I was discussing this with Shimona. They've already called it technological bullying and blatant economic coercion.
Of course, I think Chinese will react. They have reacted in the past as well to the restrictions that Americans have imposed. And then they if you are a global power, if they believe that they are a global power almost on par with the US, then they would go for tit for tat. But I think in this, certainly the Chinese do understand that the long-term challenge for them is mounting. They have created an entire technological ecosystem that was largely derived from the space that they had created for themselves in the Western ecosystem. And now, as that space is shrinking in the West for the Chinese, I think there is some level of discomfort that you see, and all the economic turmoil that China is undergoing at the moment. I think this is the last thing that they need. And given that this is happening, this is accelerating, this should be a cause for concern for them. But I think, again, as I said, I don't think in India we should be worried about what China will or will not do. We should be worried about whether we can generate enough domestic capacities. Can we create an ecosystem for ourselves that can help us make the most of this opportunity?
Well, there's been a lot of talk on that front, so hopefully that is something that will fructify. Thank you so much, Shimona, Mohan and Professor Pande for joining us on the program. Now, an exclusive interview, a bipartisan American congressional delegation being led by U.S. House of Representatives India and India-American caucus co-chairs Ro Khanna and Michael Waltz will be witnessing the Independence Day celebrations at the Red Fort on Tuesday. NDTV Sohit Mishra spoke to Ro Khanna, a Democrat from California, about the significance of the visit as well as on his special connection with India. He said his grandfather was part of India's freedom struggle.
Hello and welcome to this very special interview at NDTV, where I am being joined by four-term Indian American Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna. Thank you so much, sir, for joining with NDTV. So you are leading a delegation along with Republican Congressman Michael Waltz.
Yes.
You will also be visiting and witnessing the preparations as well as the celebration of Indian independence. So what is it? How do you look at this? What is the significance and the message that you want to share by this visit?
I'm very honored to be here. We will be at the Red Fort with the Prime Minister on India's Independence Day. That is to celebrate India's independence and link it to America's independence. We share that in common. And my grandfather spent years in jail as part of the freedom fight, so it is personal to me. And this delegation is really going to help continue to build on the momentum of the Prime Minister's visit to the United States, and then President Biden is going to be coming here in September.
So first let's talk about the background that you spoke about. It would be very special as well as close for you as well, as you share a lot of things. This is the Independence Day that you will be witnessing. Your grandfather has been over here. He has fought for this country's independence. How special is this visit for you personally as well, sir?
Well, it's a great honor to be here. I came here as a child to Delhi, would watch on television the speech. My grandfather, Amarnath Vidyalankar, spent 2 years in jail in Haryana after Lala Lajpat Rai worked for him, and then 2 years in jail as part of Quit India. So it's a great honor, and I grew up reading the Tryst of Destiny speech, and when the world sleeps, India awakens to freedom and to life. And so to be there with the Prime Minister is a great moment.
You also met the Prime Minister when he was at the US. So what was your takeaway about that meeting, and what are you expecting when you will be meeting him in India during this Independence Day, as well as before that you'll be meeting him in Delhi as well?
Well, we're going to continue to talk about the special partnership with the United States and India on defense, on the economy, on cricket, with cricket diplomacy, on technology, and a shared commitment to democracy, and how do we strengthen democracy to make sure we have pluralism, respect for minority rights, freedom of the press. These are such important values to the United States and to India's founding.
Apart from Delhi, you will also be visiting Mumbai, Hyderabad as well as other places. So what are the key focus areas, sir, which you will be focusing on in this entire visit along with the other members in your delegation?
But we're meeting a lot of business leaders here today in Bombay, meeting cricket leaders, meeting people at the Naval Defense. So we're talking about defense, about the economy, the economic development. It's been impressive to me to come to India after many years and to see that every person in the market has now a digital payment that they can accept, to see the improvements in infrastructure, to see the ambition and hunger among young people.
I also was reading the joint statement that was released from high-tech technologies to everything that we have been discussing. How do you look at the relation between India and US so far, and what is happening, or is it better than what it used to be, or at a point, the highest point as of now?
It's at the highest point it's ever been. I mean, there are more members of the India caucus that I chair than ever before. There is more defense cooperation than ever before. There is more economic cooperation. People are looking at India to be a hub instead of China for a lot of the Asia activity. So there is a deepening of the relationship.
That's exactly what my next question was regarding China. Do you think that this relationship is also deepening because of the shared concern regarding China?
I think that is one factor. I mean, obviously the Arunachal Pradesh line of control issue for India, making sure that China doesn't cross that and doesn't become dominant, and for the United States, the issue of Taiwan. But a relationship isn't just based on shared security concerns. It has to be people to people. That's why we're meeting Bollywood and cricket and culture and technology. It has to be deeper, and it has to be ultimately based on values, and that's why we will be talking about democracy and minority rights and pluralism and freedom of the press.
So Amitabh Bachchan is one highlight. Any other special person that you will be meeting as you spoke about cricket? Mumbai is known for cricket, so will you be meeting other leaders as well as sports person in Mumbai as well?
Well, they tell me they're going to try Sachin Tendulkar. We'll see.
So you are meeting the two greatest of all time, Amitabh Bachchan of Bollywood as well as Sachin Tendulkar from cricket. So thank you so much for speaking to NDTV. As you heard, a packed schedule where a lot of things will be discussed, and also very special for the Congressman himself because of his family background. So this is going to be a very interesting thing where a lot of relations between the two countries would be shared. In Mumbai, with camera person Praveen Jirohit, Sohit Mishra, NDTV.
All right, well, let's turn our focus now to Pakistan and the developments there. Pakistan is heading towards elections, but one main contender, ousted Prime Minister Imran Khan, seems out of the fray for this general election after his 3-year conviction in the Tosha Khana case. The big question is his political career over?
History repeats itself, and one more Pakistan leader bites the dust. Like others before him, Nawaz Sharif, Asif Ali Zardari, Maryam Nawaz Sharif, Parvez Musharraf, accused of corruption and facing several cases.
जब तक ये पैगाम आप तक पहुंचेगा, मुझे ये अरेस्ट कर चुके होंगे और मैं जेल में होऊंगा। ये है जंग इंसाफ की, आपके हकूक की, आपकी आज़ादी की। और कभी भी याद रखें, कोई आज़ादी प्लेट में रख के नहीं देता, जिस तरह मैं कहता हूँ जंजीरें गिरती नहीं हैं, तोड़नी पड़ती हैं। पुरअमन एहतजाज आपने करते रहना है जब तक कि आपको आपका हक नहीं मिलता, और वो सबसे बड़ा फंडामेंटल राइट है वोट के जरिए अपनी हुकूमत मुंतखब करना, ना तो किसी और कोई कब्जा ग्रुप इस मुल्क के ऊपर कब्जा करके बैठ जाए।
Convicted by a lower court, Imran is now lodged in high security Attock jail, has appealed for a bail in Islamabad High Court and may have to go to Supreme Court. But what has come undone is his push to fight elections and come back to power. After a 3-year conviction in Tosha Khana case, he is banned from fighting elections for 5 years.
आज रात आपकी और ऐवान की इजाजत से मैं
Meanwhile, Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has dissolved the parliament 3 days before its term ends, marking the end of a chaotic tenure which began 5 years ago with Imran Khan at the helm. Khan became the first Prime Minister in Pakistan's history to be overthrown through a vote of no confidence.
It has no confidence in the Prime Minister, Mr. Imran Khan.
The only constitutional way to remove the head of government in Pakistan. According to country's constitution, elections should be held within 60 days if a legislative assembly is dissolved on the scheduled day, and within 90 days if it is done earlier than that. However, the likelihood of elections being held by November is slim, since the parliament has approved the latest census. This means delimitation must be completed before elections can be held. So Sharif is clearly buying time before holding polls. And for Imran Khan, getting bail and even a stay on the conviction will not allow him to fight elections. He needs to be exonerated for that to happen, and there's just not enough time. Legal maneuvers will take time, and the Supreme Court may not be as helpful as it was last May. Even a presidential pardon may be difficult, as the term of PTI-affiliated President Arif Alvi comes to an end this September. All this seems to have been carefully brought about since his defiance of Pakistan Army, his huge rallies and violent protests during and after his arrest in May. With no PTI in fray and tacit army support, it can be smooth sailing for Sharif.
Now to the crisis in Niger. India has issued an advisory for its citizens in the West African nation, asking them to leave the country. India's Ministry of External Affairs also asked Indians to defer non-essential travel there as the situation remains volatile. There are 250 Indians in Niger. Now, on the 26th of July, members of the Presidential Guard announced on national television that they had ousted President Bazoum. A few days later, General Abdurrahmane, who served as the head of the Presidential Guard, took over as leader of Niger's new military junta. The West African regional bloc had given them 7 days to reinstate the president, but that time has come and gone. So what next? Sam Mednick of the Associated Press sent us this report.
2 weeks ago, mutinous soldiers ousted Niger's democratically elected president. Since then, regional tensions are deepening, and there's growing uncertainty within the country as to what is going to happen next. President Mohamed Bazoum, who was ousted, is still under house arrest in the capital, Niamey, with his wife and son. He's surrounded by guards. People close to the president, as well as his ruling party, has said that he has no electricity, no water, and is running out of food. There is concern that if this continues, the situation could turn dire. Meanwhile, the junta is digging in. It has created a new government, appointed members of cabinet, and has basically said that they are not going anywhere. The West African regional bloc had given them 7 days to reinstate the president or face the threat of force. Those 7 days have come and gone. The junta did not reinstate Bazoum, and there has been no use of force by the West African regional bloc. On Thursday, the West African regional bloc ordered the deployment of a standby force to restore democracy in Niger. However, the specifics of the order are unclear. It's not clear who would make up the force, where they would deploy to, and when they would activate. On the streets of the capital, Niamey, there is both a sense of calm as people go about their daily lives and a sense of people preparing for what might come. Every night, the youth go out onto the streets, check cars for weapons, and keep an eye out for the potential of foreign intervention. The junta has told people to report anything suspicious. They've also closed the airspace and shut land borders in preparation of something that might come.
Army Chief General Manoj Pande is in the UK on a 5-day visit. He reviewed the Sovereign's Parade at the prestigious Royal Military Academy in Sandhurst. He is the first Chief of the Army Staff from India to be the Sovereign's representative for the parade. The Army Chief will also hold talks with the top British defence brass on bilateral strategic issues. General Pande highlighted the need to keep up with changing trends in warfare.
As you prepare yourself for future wars, remember, despite technological advancements and emergence of niche technologies in the present battlefield, the impact and significance of the man or woman behind the gun remains undiminished. It is the unwavering resolve, courage and valor of soldiers every made on the battlefield that will determine the ultimate victory.
And finally, we leave you with these visuals of quad naval ships sailing into Sydney for the Malabar military exercises. Thanks so much for watching. Goodbye.